ever considered that we are living in a unique time, that something world-changing is about to happen, and that it might concern you? If so, you're in the right place. Keep listening, and you'll hear thought-provoking views behind the news that point to a new and better future for all. Many people now sense that humanity is not alone. So consider this. If the Christ or the Buddha walked among us today as modern men, would we recognize them? What would they be saying? And most importantly, would we listen? Every Sunday on this program, Share International Radio will examine extraordinary events that are unfolding behind the headline news. This may be the message of hope you've been waiting for. And now, welcome to this week's show.
Welcome indeed, one and all. This is Diana Gold-Holland broadcasting from cloudy Vancouver today. Welcome to our show, The Ending of Bondage and the Rising of the People's Voice, a harbinger of the new time as predicted by Maitreya. Well, it's certainly been an eventful week. The doomsday clock has been moved forward 30 seconds to 2.5 minutes to midnight. The scientist in charge of that decision stated that over the course of 2016, global security landscape darkened as the international community failed to come effectively to grips with hunger's most pressing existential threats, which are nuclear weapons and climate change. Another interesting factoid, George Orwell's book, 1984, about living under the totalitarian rule, has vaulted to first place on the Amazon bestseller list. And exactly 1 week ago, on the day after President Trump's inauguration, an estimated 500,000 people marched in Washington in what was called the Women's March, and an estimated 2.5 million people joined in worldwide. Just today, hundreds of people gathered at major U.S. airports to protest President Trump's executive order suspending refugee arrivals and banning some travelers from 7 nations with majority Muslim populations. So quite a week of developments. Today's guest, Sabina Qureshi, joins us to talk about that, about the rise of the people's voice and power as predicted by Maitreya. She is an artist, musician, and English teacher living in Barcelona. I invite you to check out the show my co-host Cielito did with her on June 5th, 2016. That show was entitled Maitreya Needs You, Why You're Part of the Most Extraordinary Event of Our Times. And you'll find that on our website, www.shareontheair.org. Now, as ever, a tiny bit of background for our new listeners. The show premises are that we are not alone. We have help of an extraordinary nature at this critical, very critical time for humanity and the planet, and that aid comes in the form of great teachers who are emerging now onto the world scene to help and guide us through this difficult time. At their head stands the Lord Maitreya, I will spell that, M-A-I-T-R-E-Y-A, who is the spokesperson for all of these great teachers, the major spokesperson, their leader, and he is also known in the world by the various religions, such as the being known as the Christ for the Christians, the Imam Mahdi for the Jews, for the Muslims, the Messiah for the Jews, Krishna returned for the Hindu nations, etc. So he and these other teachers are emerging, as I said now, quite physically onto the world scene to give us the very great guidance that they can provide. You will find details of that also on our website. There are a couple of introductory podcasts there that you can listen to that will fill you in on the complete story. And of course, as ever, we offer this information for your consideration only. If it has the ring of truth and you want to find out more, there are many ways to do that. And much literature on sources that we will be talking about later on in the program. For now, I want to get quickly to welcoming Sabina. And Sabina, welcome.
Hi, Diana.
Hi. Listen, let's start by explaining why we two, who are both Canadian, are talking about the USA today.
Well, yes, many people are talking about the USA today and these days, but basically it's because whatever happens in the United States has a tremendous impact on the rest of the world, and these days a lot is happening in the United States, a lot that has a big impact. A lot of things are happening that are changing conditions around the world for people. In many different areas. So I think it's a very good time to talk about what's happening in the United States. Um, you mentioned the Women's March last weekend. Today, people are protesting against the ban on travelers coming from certain countries and the ban on refugees. In addition to the protests in airports, now there are thousands of people gathering in different parts of the United States, in New York, Boston, Virginia, Washington already. I've read about those protests and seen photos um, to protest that. And another thing that's happened, one of the things that President Trump did was that he put into effect what's called the global gag rule. It's a ban on funding for groups that offer abortions or abortion advocacy, even if they use their own funds to do that. And in The Guardian, I read that campaigners fear that this could affect a wide range of groups who provide life-saving treatment, such as those working to combat HIV and Zika, as well as those helping prevent child and maternal deaths and unwanted pregnancies worldwide. So there's a lot of things that are happening in the United States which have far-reaching effects across the world.
Absolutely. Sabina, there seems to be a bit of technical difficulty on the line. We may have to try reconnecting. So what I'm going to do is, with my audiences and your kind permission, I'm going to skip right to the end and talk about some of the things that we can do to take our place in this rise of the people's voice, and essentially to help the coming forward of these great teachers so that they can begin to help us quite more openly. They emerge at the speed that we welcome them. And as more and more people find out about this news, as more and more people sense these developments in their heart, whether they know directly of Maitreya or not, if they are sensing his priorities, which are basically food, shelter, healthcare, and education for every world citizen, and also coming to realize our divine nature and our place in the divine plan of evolution for this planet. These are the things that are most dear to his heart. And as we come into alignment with those, we begin to affect more powerfully our surroundings. One of the things that Maitreya predicted was this very rise of people power, and that the voice of the people would be heard. So in that sense, we have come a tremendous amount of pathways since those predictions were made in the early 80s, and we are now seeing these huge mobilizations of people who will no longer accept what is going on. When very soon we will have the means to provide transcripts of our calls so that you can go over them at greater leisure and in depth. And in today's particular transcript, when it goes up, you will find that we have included several messages from Maitreya. These were messages that were delivered through spokesperson Benjamin Krem at the very beginning of Maitreya's mission. And 140 messages were received directly by telepathic contact between Mr. Krem and Maitreya, who literally overshadowed him. and used his voice apparatus to speak his message to the very early crowds finding out about him at meetings at Friend's house in Euston Road, London. Those messages have been collected. They are collected in books. There are examples of some of them on the Share International website. That's www.share-international.org. And you can go and listen to some of those messages there. When you hear them, you hear the voice of Mr. Krem, now deceased, but the energies are those of Maitreya, the potentizing energies of love, of light, and of power to help transform this world. So I invite you to go and see some of those, and as I said, several of them will be included in the transcripts. So that's one thing that you can do. Maitreya himself and Mr. Krem, as his roving ambassador, very much encouraged people, not only as people, but as groups, to demonstrate, to write to government representatives, to actually stand up and realize that we are not individually one small person, but that we all belong to a greater collective, now millions strong, that is calling for justice, calling for peace, and calling for sharing. This we have seen demonstrated so profoundly in the last week and in many demonstrations of this nature leading up to it. So we are definitely on the right track and getting stronger. So there are two ways to continue, and we'll be back with a better quality voice for Sabina to continue our interview on the other side of the break. Stay with us, please. We'll get it all ironed out. Bye for now.
Your conscious connection to a more mindful world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Spiritual, metaphysical, green living, psychic, alternative healing, life coaching. Do any of these or similar terms apply to your business or cause? If so, you are in a niche market with a very specific audience. Conscious Gate PR is the world's leading conscious public relations agency. With a global reach of over 4 million and growing, we offer comprehensive media campaigns to our targeted market. Learn more at ConsciousGatesPR.com. Conscious marketing for conscious minds.
Join Vibe Nation radio host, international psychic medium Carrie Turcotte, as she guides her listeners to rediscover themselves by accessing the keys of knowledge that already exist within. Each week's show is divinely orchestrated to intertwine with the universal energies, allowing the listeners to go deeper within. At the end of each show, Carrie will tap into the energies of the listeners and give a message from Spirit about the upcoming week. If you really want to get to know who you truly are, join Carrie each Monday at 3 p.m. on Vibe Nation Radio.
Now there's a book about UFOs that stands out. British author Benjamin Krem has worked directly with the Space Brothers and writes about their spiritual mission in The Gathering of the Forces of Light, a truly inspiring book. Visit shareontheairradio.org for details. That's shareontheairradio.org. shareontheairradio.org.
Hey everybody, Rachel Ray here. Nothing brings a bigger smile to my face than cooking up a big meal for the whole family and lots of friends. But there's not enough room at my table for the 17 million kids in our country who struggle with hunger. That's why the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks collects surplus food to give hope to hungry kids. But they can't do it without your help. Support Feeding America and your local food bank at feedingamerica.org.
A message from Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Welcome back. We have our guest Sabina Qureshi calling in from Barcelona, and our topic today, the voice of the people. A little ironic that we're having these technical difficulties, Sabina. How do you sound now?
I hope I sound better. Can you tell me?
Well, it sounds good to me. Much better than the breakup before. So let's
Okay.
Let's take it from the top with our show. And we were talking about many of the mass demonstrations and some of the issues that have come up this week alone, such as the gag order for abortion advocacy and the airport demonstrations. So I'd like us to carry on about that. Excuse me. Let's talk about the Women's March and the airport protests, Sabina.
Well, both of those, and in addition to the protests in the airport, now there are thousands of people gathering in different cities across the U.S. to protest these travel bans. And I'd just like to mention some of the slogans that we're seeing at the airport. We will love and protect each other. Unite for people. Democracy for all. Refugees are welcome. Immigrants are America. Muslims are welcome. Your struggle is my struggle. One religion, love. One race, human. Equality, justice, peace. No ban, no wall. So we're seeing here really the same principles that Maitreya tells us that are what we need to work with if we want to move forward. The idea that we are brothers and sisters of one family, and that the world's resources are there for everybody to share, and that only with real justice can we ever have any peace.
Which is, of course, Maitreya's absolutely fundamental message. So, and this is the latest in a succession of demonstrations. I mean, I'm sure most of us remember the Arab Spring, which began in Tunisia and inspired so many people of North Africa and the Middle East to express discontent against autocratic governments. What do you think is subtending all of that? What is it in people that brings them to these actions now?
Well, I think that what's happening is that the energies of love that Maitreya's presence in the world releases are having a profound impact on how people experience themselves. And more people feel their own worth, and they feel that they have a right to a life that is in accordance with their own values and principles. And so they're no longer willing to accept the kinds of strictures or, the kinds of oppression that they've lived with in the past. And so they start to speak up, they start to rise up, they start to organize and to protest. We also saw this back in 2002 when the first invasion of Iraq was being planned and prepared, when millions of people across the whole world came out to protest. And it's just kept going. There were the Indignados in Spain. There was the Occupy movement. And I think each of these is part of one big, big movement that is accelerating. And the frequency of these marches and protests is increasing. And I think it's going to continue to increase because basically on a very fundamental level, human beings, we are not willing anymore to accept a system that allows more than half the world's population to live in extreme poverty and to die of hunger. And neither are we willing to accept inequality between men and women or injustice in terms of the economics of the distribution of the world's resources. So really, it's a huge, huge process.
Absolutely. And yet Maitreya urges us time and time again to stand with our brothers. And this is what we're seeing taking place now in the U.S. and literally around the world. However, there is quite a division in a very glaring opposition between camps in the States, for example, just now. And this, too, Maitreya talked about in saying, "My love creates a polarity of viewpoints. That is the sword which I will wield. My friends, know well where you stand and receive my light." Let's talk a bit about the sword of cleavage.
Well, basically, it's another way to describe the energy of love, which Maitreya is an embodiment of. And this love, usually we think of love as something that makes us feel good, something that's kind of warm and cozy, or, well, there are different ways to think of it. But really, the disinterested love that he represents or embodies, the love that we would call a Christ love, it's an energy that galvanizes and energizes and, in a way, empowers everyone into being more of what they are and to feeling more of what they are. And so the result of that is this polarity, because you'll find that people fall roughly into two groups. There will be people who want more unity, who feel inclusive towards those who are different, and who are interested in the ideas of sharing. And then you'll find there are people for whom that is just anathema. They're like absolutely against this type of inclusiveness, and the notion of sharing for them just sounds completely wrong. And so it's a division. It's a very clear division. And that's one of the effects of this energy of love. It makes it clearer for each person really where they stand.
And Maitreya says in his message number 19, the messages that I described earlier, he says, "Teach men that to share is divine, to love is God's nature, to work together is man's destiny. Take your stand on the only platform from which the light of the future may be seen. Take your stand, my friends, together and show the way." Now, I want to talk a little bit about something else that has been a development in the emergence of Maitreya, and it was made known to us through Mr. Krem, who was one of his major spokespersons, and even in Maitreya's messages themselves, that there have been a series of blueprints created whereby the redistribution of the world's goods, the actual rendering of justice through sharing, has been planned by high people and people in the know in the scientific community, and especially in the United Nations and in certain other economist groups and what have you. These plans can hasten the implementation of this saner, safer life for all, where food, healthcare, education, and shelter are all fundamental provisions, which is certainly not the case now in the world. And this need, as every group will tell you, is one of political will, because we do have the resources, we do have the distribution networks that could put this in place very rapidly. So we are seeing more and more things. We in the field who watch for these things are seeing more and more things coming out that are so closely in line with this idea of blueprints. And Sabina and I had the great fortune to listen earlier this week to the book launch YouTube of American economist Jeffrey Sachs, that's S-A-C-H-S, an American economist and expert in sustainable development, who has incidentally twice been named among Time magazine's top 100 global influential leaders. Now, he has just released a new book called Building a New American Economy, Smart, Fair, and Sustainable, with a foreword by Bernie Sanders. We will have a link to that up on the website, and you can go and listen to the YouTube, or you can Google it under Sachs book launching Building New American Economy. And he makes some extremely interesting points, and one of his main ideas is using our power to think big. And Sabina and I both very much, resonated with that. So we'd like to have a few words of that. We will be interrupted by the break, but let's see as far as we can get with this, Sabina. Doing something big, doing it together, and doing it on a timeline. This is the basic message of Mr. Sachs, and let's talk about JFK and how he ties in with this story.
Right. Well, Jeffrey Sachs used JFK as an example of doing something big and doing it on a timeline, and that was the project to land the man on the moon. And when Kennedy talked about that in 1961, it was something that sounded completely unattainable and probably impossible, because at that point it still was. But what he basically did was sort of throw out the challenge and say, well, why don't we do this? Let's decide to do it. And then that was what was done, because it had been decided. And so what Mr. Sachs says is that basically what we need are goals, and they are a matter of choice. If we're going to accomplish things, we have to decide that we're going to do that. And having goals also makes us think, because they energize and mobilize us.
And Maitreya says nothing is accomplished. Sorry. They help us be accountable. Maitreya has said nothing occurs on its own. Man must act to bring about the needed changes. We'll be back on the other side to talk about more about Mr. Sachs' books and other things.
Free your mind. Expand your soul. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Have you bought into the idea that you have to work hard for your money, that business is hard? I will share some dynamic access consciousness tools to get you out of your own way so you can create a business that actually succeeds. Join me, Simone Millisers, on The Joy of Business at 4 p.m. Mondays Eastern.
The Awakening of Humanity by Benjamin Krim is a concise, prophetic book about momentous changes soon to occur. It focuses on an unprecedented event, the emergence into full public life of Maitreya, the world teacher. Download the book free online. Visit shareontheairradio.org. That's shareontheairradio.org. shareontheairradio.org.
My name is Dale Pazinski, and this is how I live United. I volunteer with United Way, helping the homeless in my community by teaching computer skills and helping them build a basic resume to save on their very own USB drive. It's huge when somebody says, "Hey man, that job that you helped me apply for, I got it." My name is Dale Pazinski. I help people achieve financial independence. So I don't just wear the shirt, I live it.
Give, advocate, volunteer. Live United. Go to liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
Hello. Welcome back with our guest Sabina Qureshi. We are discussing some of the blueprint materials that seem to be surfacing, as well as the crowds of millions who are ready to endorse them. Sabina, give us briefly the gist of the book. The proposal that we need goals. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we need goals, and that we just have to make up our mind. There are already goals. For decades, for a long time, people have been formulating goals. What do we need to do to solve the problems of the world? What he talks about are what are called the Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 of them. These are kind of the newest incarnation of what before were called the Millennium Goals. And they're basically founded on the idea that basic needs must be met, all societies should be fair, everyone should have an equal chance. We shouldn't destroy the planet while we build our economies. And basically what he says is meeting these goals is our generation's moonshot, or it's equivalent to putting a man on the moon back in the 60s. It's a challenge,
and
but
it's a very optimistic book. It gives a very clear path forward. It presents charts that are absolutely breathtaking in terms of where we are in this situation, and it's a very, very compelling and hopeful piece of material. We can achieve these goals. But you, at the same time, Sabina, have come up with a few interesting statistics for us as to that are in his books. Why don't you mention those?
Well, this is just about the United States. Back in 1970, the 35 countries of the OECD agreed that each of them would contribute 0.7% of their GDP to these development goals. However, right now, only 5 countries actually do contribute that much or more. Talking about the U.S., it currently only contributes 0.19% of its GDP, not 0.7, which means that its annual contribution is about equal to 6 hours worth of the Pentagon's budget. And that's just to put it in context, to see what the difference is between what Buckminster Fuller called living-re versus killing-re. Like, how much are we spending on living and how much are we spending on killing? What Jeffrey Sachs says is that if the U.S. were to increase their spending up to 0.7% of their GDP, just that increase alone from only the United States would be enough to end the AIDS epidemic. It would end deaths from malaria. It would have all the children in the world in school and staying there through secondary education and much more. Because the United States is such a big economy, it would have a huge effect. And the thing
yet,
that I
according
think
to
is
Sachs,
interesting...
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to mention that... Okay, you talk.
All right. Well, what I wanted to say is that these goals and these kind of plans have been in place for a long time. But what's really new is that now people are starting to speak up and stake their claim to what they think is important. And I wanted to just read this quote from one of the messages from Benjamin Cram's master. And this was published in Share International magazine in April of 2016. And he says, despite, nay, because of the plans and actions of dangerous men, the people are throwing off their ancient yoke and claiming their right to be heard. A new urgency and a new confidence invests their claim with power. The power of the people's voice breaks through the age-old bondage and points the way to the future. So that's really what's new. And now your turn, Diana.
Yes, I really do love that quote. Now the people, Maitreya talks about people standing up and demanding their God-given rights and not being willing to be hoodwinked much longer. Says Maitreya's, one of Benjamin Cram's master's messages, which are always at the beginning of the magazine Share International, with which our program is affiliated. I'll give you the website for that is www.share-international.org, and every issue starts with a compelling message from the master that Benjamin Cram was in direct contact with. He talks, and Maitreya talks, Jeffrey Sachs talks, so many people talk now of making our governments accountable. This is, as well as having these big goals, doing them on a timeline, doing them together, and holding our governments accountable for them. Sabina, how do we do that? Can we do it? And if so, how?
Yes, I think we can.
the most important thing is to keep these topics alive in the public domain. We have to keep the conversation going, keep the issues in the public eye. And many activist groups recognize this now. They basically use publicity to keep topics in the public eye and to keep something current. It's the need for discussion and engagement in the public domain. That's how you do it. You don't stop talking about it, and you don't stop going out on protest. You have to get the message out and keep it out there. It has to stay in the public domain. And this is interesting because it also ties in with something that Maitreya said about communication. He said that communication leads to awareness. And it's true. The more you talk about something, the more you understand it. And it is in the process of speaking and communicating that more and more awareness is generated.
Right. And, I wanted to mention as well how the effect of the Internet and, online crowd creations and pressure group creations are growing as an effect. I was quite interested to see right after the march last Sunday, I was doing a bit of research and I came across something absolutely marvelous that was under the Women's March umbrella called 10 Days, 100 Actions. And there is a whole program of mobilization and involvement that people can get involved with that. So 10 days, 100 actions, a complete plan where people can just mobilize, galvanize, and the more people that do mobilize, the more people who will galvanize. So we are very much empowered, even by the power of the Internet, to organize. And this is what I think the populace is beginning to do more and more now, is to organize, and of course that takes communication. So
that's right. Yeah. Another thing I was reading that was about that was the economist Amartya Sen. His book Collective Choice and Social Welfare is being reissued. And when he was being interviewed about this, he said, basically talking about, in this case, Brexit, but this applies to all the issues that are important to us. He said these are complex questions, and you need a whole lot of engagement. It isn't that you have elections once in 4 or 5 years and then democracy goes away and you already decided everything in the election. There is a continuing need to think and debate. All of us have to examine how we could communicate better with each other. So I think it's this continuous need to think and debate that's really key here.
Right. And will you give us that author's name again, Sabina?
Yes, that's Amartya Sen. He's an economist, originally from India. Well, it's now part of Bangladesh, where he was born. But I think he now lives in England. And the book is Collective Choice and Social Welfare.
Great. And the last name is spelled S-E-N, Amartya
Correct.
Sen. Yeah.
That's right.
While we're on that topic, I want to mention 2 other of the very seminal things that to me belong to the blueprint category. It just so happens that both of these authors happen to be Canadian. I don't know why, but they definitely have a very clear proposition and voice. One is Stephen Lewis, who was a Canadian politician and later took on the role of Special Ambassador to the UN for the AIDS pandemic in Africa. And he wrote, he did a series of yearly lectures sponsored by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. And then later these were compiled into a book called The Race Against, I forgot the exact name. It's sitting in front of me somewhere here. Race Against Debt, I believe it is. And in it, he provides, in a very short 88 pages, a complete expose of the whole AIDS program and how it can be solved. And it's solved with very humane manners, including empowering the grandmothers, because so many of the parents and teachers have been lost to this pandemic. It's a very humane book. The other person I want to mention is Paul Hellyer, Hellyer. He is a Canadian statesman. He's now 91 or 92 years old. And one of the major things that one of his major claims to fame, or that it has been thrust upon him, is that he is one of the first parliamentarians in the world to speak openly of the presence of extraterrestrials among us and of the help that they are here to provide. So all of that, you can find quite a bit of that on the websites. There's a paulhellyer.com website. But what I want to talk about is his latest book called Money Mafia, and that is a rather chilling expose of the covert control of the economies, which needs to be broken at this time. So everybody I have recommended that book to has come away somewhat shocked and actually galvanized. So I cannot recommend that book highly enough either. Now, of course, there are many, many other great proponents of change, and I salute them all. We can't talk about them all on our program, but I did want to bring those two up. And, of course, we have the complete compendium of Mr. Krem's work, which is focused on Maitreya and his priorities and the priorities of the Masters of Wisdom. Those books, 16 of them, I believe, and translated into several languages, abridged in many ways, you will find on the share-international.org website, along with videos showing Mr. Krem talking about these issues. They are very, very powerful books, and directly from the source itself, Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom. Join us again on the other side of the break. I'm with Sabina Qureshi. We are talking about the rise of the voice of the people.
Free your mind. Expand your soul. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Hi, I'm Kelly Fox, host and astrologer of The Astrology Show. Each week, I'll give you access to the current transits, which are a valuable tool that provide astrological information to help unlock the potential each of us has. Understanding the stars can help steer us in the right direction to make better informed choices. So if you're wondering what's going to happen in your week ahead, be sure to tune in to The Astrology Show for guidance. Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time.
Are you on a spiritual path and want a quick reference guide? Look no further. The booklet Ageless Wisdom Teaching introduces key spiritual concepts, including reincarnation, meditation, and initiation. Download the book free online. Visit shareontheairradio.org for details. That's shareontheairradio.org. shareontheairradio.org.
It only takes a minute to find out if you may have prediabetes, and you can do it at doihaveprediabetes.org. But you're probably not going to, are you? Kids, work, listening to the radio. You're busy, which is great because busy people can't get prediabetes. Oh my, I read that wrong. They can. Should have worn my glasses. So visit doihaveprediabetes.org and take a short test, because prediabetes can be reversed.
Brought to you by the Ad Council and its pre-diabetes awareness partners.
Welcome back to the rise of the voice of the people and Maitreya's prediction that this would occur. So as we wind down the show, one thing I want to concentrate on is the fact that there, to me, well, not really. Let me back up here. These are dark times. There's no questions about it. But there's no need to feel defeated or angry. If we do that, we just add to and compound those forces in the world through the lowering the emotional climate of humanity and clouding the mind belt as well. So instead of feeling defeated or angry or any of those things, we know that we can channel that energy into constructive action. There's a lot that one can be doing right now, and that's what I'd like to end on, those more hopeful aspects of galvanizing, mobilizing, taking action, and doing things together on a timetable to get goals met, with governments being accountable. Sabina, do you think the marches will have any lasting effect?
Oh, absolutely, I do, yes. We're already seeing that the fact that so many people are protesting against these travel bans means that the current administration is realizing that it's not just going to be an easy sell, and that they're going to have to deal with a lot of resistance and a lot of opposition to these policies. And we're also seeing around the world leaders from other countries speaking up against these bans. So just in the context of this one issue, right now you can see that the fact that people have gone out and protested and are continuing to do so is very important and has a huge impact on what happens next. And it's basically, you have to see it as a long-term project. It's something that we have to be willing to keep doing. And just to provide some encouragement, I'd like to read a short excerpt from one of Maitreya's messages. This is from message number 14. He says, "Already the signs of change are appearing. The clouds are lifting, and a new hope seizes mankind. Will you be among those who pave the way? Will you take part now in this great work and fulfill the world's need? There is no higher call than that to serve the world. There is no greater commitment than to serve your brother." And in another short excerpt here from message number 103, he says, "Many are the changes, subtle and gross, which are being forged by my presence. Much that is harmful to man is being destroyed. Much of good blossoms in its stead. Know this to be so, and fear not." So basically, we do have his assurance that things are working out. And I think it's really a question of looking at it as the glass half full rather than half empty, to see the signs of these changes and all of this good news.
Right, and he does say in another message that no one is too small or too frail to participate in the great changes that need to be made. So he's very hopeful on that effect. Something that may surprise some of our listeners is that we have heard and even have pictures of some participations of Maitreya himself in demonstrations. As we have mentioned many times before, he can and does appear to people throughout the world and has done so in demonstrations. There was one in London. I'm afraid I don't have the date here, but you can easily find it on Share International in London, where he was encouraging the demonstrators to put their energies behind these efforts. And his great saying to them was, "Keep your eyes on the prize, and the prize is humanity." Another couple of important ones, and these you can see pictures of on YouTube. Maitreya appeared as a somewhat transparent, one might say, a ghostly white horseman in Tahrir Square in Cairo in December of 2011. There are YouTubes of this, and if you look up Ghost Horseman Cairo or whatever, you can see this footage, and this is in line with some appearances that Maitreya makes in terms of his role as world teacher and Christ for this age. Many of the great religions expect certain signs to occur, and as the White Horseman, Maitreya personifies the Kalki avatar, who is expected at the end of the times or not the end of the times, but as the next great teacher by the Hindus. So that I found rather interesting, and there are several stories like that have come to the surface. So he is now giving radio interviews in various countries of the world. As an ordinary person, he has not declared himself publicly yet, to acknowledge his status. And this is because humanity of its own free will needs to come into line with his ideas and his guidance. There is no infringement of free will ever in cosmic law, and by this Maitreya is bound. So he appears as a normal person, as a very wise person, and presents some ideas for our consideration. And this he will do for the next while. So listen to people that you may learn from. That is another step that can be taken in terms of taking action. Sabina, if I was mentioning Benjamin Krem's several books on on these new changes required, on what we can do to mobilize. Do you have a favorite that you would like to suggest?
Well, yeah, I think my favorite is Maitreya's teachings, The Laws of Life. And I think the reason I like it so much is that there's an entire section on the art of self-realization, and then there's a whole other section on current events and the world today. And what we hear are his words, his actual thoughts on these things. And I just find it really fascinating and interesting because so much of what he says kind of illuminates things that you thought you already knew what they were, or that you already had your particular way of understanding them. But then when you hear what he says, suddenly you see it in a different way, in a broader way. Basically, it really is it's an example of illumination. You feel that you see it more. And I really love that feeling. So yeah, that would be my favorite.
Yeah, that's that's a very perceptive reaction. You know, many people say that what he's talking about just makes so much sense that it resonates. So yes, there is an awareness that is allowed to flourish in seeing these books. Another thing people can do is of course check out the Benjamin Krem videos of lectures that were given around the world. There's a particular one on the website that occurred in Japan. It is several years old now, but it is still extremely relevant, as are all of the Master's messages. We're coming close to the end of the program, Sabina, so I'd like us to talk about transmission meditation as a very special way of taking action that other people may not know about.
Yes, well, it's a form of meditation that you do in groups of 3 people or more. And when you do this meditation, it has basically 2 results. One is that you yourself benefit in terms of your own inner growth and progress, and it energizes you and galvanizes you yourself in your own life. The other effect is that you're helping in one of the tasks that the Masters of Wisdom do, which is that they channel and send energies that are coming into the Earth all the time from beyond our solar system, energies which have a very high potency, and these energies are very beneficial, and so they are very necessary to stimulate life and also us, that is human beings. However, the vibration of the energies is so fast, so high, that most people can't absorb them. So what you do as a group when you do transmission meditation is that you receive these energies under the guidance of the masters, and as the energies pass through your chakras, they're automatically lowered in frequency and become absorbable. I know that's not really a word, but they become capable of being absorbed by regular people, and so then the masters can send them where they see that they're necessary. So you help the masters in that work when you do transmission meditation. So it's a very, very important thing to do.
And so these are some of the ways that we can mobilize and take action, knowing that we have at our head a very powerful, centered, and loving guide. He says, "My friends, I am glad indeed with the response of mankind. Many see around them a world chaotic and dangerous, and rightly so. Nevertheless, within the maelstrom of this apparent chaos, there's a center of calm generating hope and change. My friends, were you to see as I do the changes now occurring, your hearts would leap as gladly as does mine. For throughout the world today, man is awakening.